Before the 18th century, an erroneous theory called the phlogiston theory was prevalent. It held that a substance called phlogiston existed within combustible materials, and when an object burned, phlogiston was released in the form of light and heat. The phlogiston theory was actually quite unscientific, yet it prevailed for over 100 years. Many renowned chemists, such as Scheele and Cavendish, advocated for it. In 1774, the British scientist Joseph Priestley, while heating mercuric oxide, accidentally discovered a new gas. A candle burned much more vigorously in this gas than in air. This gas was, in fact, oxygen. Unfortunately, Priestley believed this gas contained no phlogiston at all, and because the candle released phlogiston abundantly, it burned more brightly. He called this gas dephlogisticated air. When discussing this, Engels remarked that Priestley had the truth under his nose and still missed it. Later, through repeated experiments, the French chemist Antoine Lavoisier recognized that this dephlogisticated air was actually oxygen, and thus proposed the oxygen theory of combustion. This allowed people to finally understand the essence of burning, also demonstrating the fallacy of the phlogiston theory. Similar situations are not uncommon in real life. Many common-sense notions and routine phenomena are not necessarily correct. For instance, we often hear that drinking 8 glasses of water a day is beneficial for health, so many people insist on doing so, regardless of how uncomfortable it feels. When you find this drinking regimen agonizing, do you ever stop and think, why endure this discomfort to drink 8 glasses? Is there something behind this common sense that you haven't explored deeply? If you think about it, you'll realize this advice ignores the water content in food, focusing only on the body's fluid requirement. The juices, milk, etc., we consume daily can adequately meet our hydration needs, and drinking excess water can actually be detrimental to health. Another example, many people believe drinking lots of bone broth can supplement calcium. However, numerous studies show that bone broth doesn't contain significant amounts of calcium. While adding vinegar during boiling can slightly increase the calcium content, it remains relatively low. Could these seemingly correct little pieces of common sense actually be wrong? It's not surprising, really. Confucius taught us to think twice before acting. However, common sense often falls outside the scope of such thinking, because certain common sense notions have become unshakable spiritual authorities in people's minds, granted immunity from scrutiny by thought. Once you get used to seeing something, it becomes a habit, forming a fixed mindset. You assume things are inherently that way, that you know them inside out, and no further investigation or thought is needed. What you fail to realize is that things are always changing. Because you're unaware of these changes, the things you thought you knew well become unfamiliar. As the saying goes, familiarity is not true knowledge. Accumulated errors can become accepted as truth. This is also an important point Hegel elaborates in the introduction to his Phenomenology of Spirit. There is a difference, even a significant gap, between the familiar and true knowledge. The familiar merely grasps the outline of things before us, without deep reflection on their inner meaning. Hence, it is not true knowledge. The same applies to common sense. Common sense is often the source of various errors and absurdities, a hiding place for conventionality. Therefore, common sense is not pure knowledge. Hegel also spoke of the knowledge of knowledge, the thinking of thought. That is, the reflection on true knowledge concerning familiar things. In-depth research and changing circumstances can overturn previously held ideas. Engels, in Anti-Düring, stated, "While common sense is a most respectable guide within the domain of everyday life, it is sure to meet with the most amazing adventures as soon as it ventures out into the wide field of inquiry." Our scientific forebears discovered truth precisely when they had no answers or refused to believe the answers of their predecessors. They faced doubt, criticism, and even paid with their lives. For example, the Spanish physician Servetus was executed for proposing that blood circulates from the heart, not the liver. Bruno, who championed Copernicus's heliocentric theory, was burned alive at the Campo de' Fiori. We cannot recognize the true face of Mount Lu, because we are right there in the mountain. Because common sense can obscure everything that is not common sense, we must not mistake the familiar for true knowledge, nor regard common sense and familiarity as the entirety of knowledge and wisdom. We need to cultivate a mindset of reverse thinking. Respect common sense, but do not be superstitious about it. Question the things we take for granted by asking reverse questions, learn to doubt, inherit but also critique, and elevate perceptual knowledge to rational knowledge. Only by overturning conventional thinking, turning the world upside down, and causing even the most supreme beings between heaven and earth to crumble, can you forge a new path in this upside-down world.